This week on the show, my guest, he is the North American Boxing Federation super lightweight champion. He has a professional record of 35 wins, 7 losses, 2 draws, and 25 wins by way of knockout. He's on a 6-fight win streak, including a recent win over former champion Alberto Machado. He trains out of my adopted home city and country, Calgary, Alberta. My guest this week is Steve Claggett. I had a great conversation with Steve, and we touched on a lot of different topics that he went in depth about and that will speak volumes. Steve is in the fight game, right? And you need to have a certain level of mentality to want to be a part of that sport. He's had many wins, but has also had losses along the way. But the one common theme that stuck to me throughout my conversation with Steve could be summed up in this one statement: no matter what happens in life, do your best to keep moving forward. Some of the things that we discuss in this episode, we talk about the lessons he learned from his childhood and family. We talk about how he got involved in boxing. We talk about what he learned sparring with 5-time world champion Zab Judah. We talk about the early grind of trying to make a name for himself without a big promotion behind him. We talk about the pros and cons of taking fights on short notice. We talk about bouncing back from losses and not letting those losses define you, how he deals with pressure, anxiety, and tough moments. And we talk about his last fight and everything that went into that fight and so much more. If you've been watching Steve's career, this is an episode that you don't want to miss. Even if you don't know Steve, this is a great way how to get to know him and support him as his career continues to progress. But hey, before you go, please take a few moments to leave a rating and review if you're listening on the audio podcast side. And if you're watching this on YouTube, then do me a favor and subscribe to the channel before you go. So with all that being said, enjoy this week's episode with Steve Claggett. Well, man, I know you have a lot going on. I want to be respectful of your time, man. I'm looking forward to our conversation today, man. We're going to go a bunch of different topics, but I want to start the first question, man. I started the same. I'm big on gratitude, man. I believe if you're grateful for what you have in life, it's hard to be negative, man. So give me 3 things you're grateful for today, man.
I like that. First of all, I really like that because I feel the same way. I'm grateful for my health every day of my life, and I remind myself that because without it, you can't do anything for you or anyone else. So I'm first and foremost grateful for my health, grateful for my my body, my ability to walk around and do what I do. I'm grateful for my family and my close people as well, because without the connections, you're nothing, and it's kind of it becomes more and more apparent as life goes on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for the sport that I found, that I invested my whole life into, boxing, and the great people that it has brought to me, and the circles that I found myself in, and the growth that it created within me. So, I mean, I'm grateful for the game.
Man, before we get into the boxing side of things, man, we got to go back a bit, because I believe if you want to know the person, you got to understand the person, right? As I've been looking through different content and different articles, man, and just watching your fights and your mannerisms, you have this this way about you where no matter what happens in life, just for me, from what I've read and seen, that you're gonna want to improve. You're going to keep moving forward. Win, lose, or draw, the mindset, the mentality is to keep improving, keep moving forward. That's from a far standpoint from what my perception of you has been, but that's not an easy mindset to adapt, right? Because we can dwell on things pretty quickly, man. So I'm wondering, where does that come from, man? Growing up in Calgary, you know, I grew up in Calgary, born in Jamaica, but grew up in Calgary as well, too. And not everybody has that keep moving forward mentality. So where does that come from you? Was that the dynamics like? What was the dynamics like growing up for you?
Well, growing up, I was put into a whole bunch of different sports. So
Yeah.
I was lucky in that regard because my dad was a hockey player, and he loved sports, put me in everything. And I learned later in life that you develop a bunch of reflexes and you get your coordination down, you build some muscle, and it's a very good thing to get into sports and athletics early. So I was lucky in that sense because I got an opportunity to try everything. And then, I mean, I was a happy guy. I had a good family. Everything was how you want to grow up and develop. I just happened to have something inside that was confrontational by nature. Not that I wasn't starting it, but I just always found myself in it, and I always had people come, and I have to, like, I don't even know how to explain it. They say fighting does, you don't pick fighting, fighting picks you.
Yeah.
That was me, because as long as I remember, I can think back, and I had kids wanted to fight me. I had bigger cousins I was always battling with and then wrestling with. I had people at school wanted to mess with me, like, the whole way up, and I just always I had this confrontation in the soul. I don't even know how to explain it, but when I found boxing, this was like the answer to a lot of things, and I had a great life. I still do live a great life, but the fighter was always in me, and it picked me. I never chose it. I just started fighting, man. That was part of the. It was in the blood.
Yeah, man. I think we learn a lot of things directly or indirectly from our environment, parents, friends, family, whatever the case may be. But was there something, man, that stuck with you as a kid, right? That maybe you go back to today? Like, for example, my grandmother used to always say to me, and I never understood it back then, but she used to always say, it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to. Right. And I never
Okay.
fully quite understood that because, I'm 6, 7 years old and she's telling me, I'm like, yo, I hear you, but like, when's the snacks coming in? You know what I'm saying? Like, where the
Right, right,
snacks at?
right.
But as I got older, I realized, okay, this is what she meant. Was there something like that for you? Maybe by parents, maybe by a friend, maybe the environment. Do you remember something like that that sticks with you today?
Well, I mean, first of all, that's wisdom, I guess. Hey, when you
Yeah.
hear it, you don't register. It doesn't register for a while, but then with time and experience, you learn the value of that lesson that you got before.
Yeah.
And I mean, for myself, I had many teachings, many good coaches, and I had the same kind of thing where it didn't click until later in life. And I mean, my dad always taught me that hard work pays off, and you can rest. It was almost like the Kobe Bryant one: rest at the end, not in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was something that I learned as a kid. I learned early in life, and I think I took that into my boxing training and my mentality towards just the game in general, and the persistence and perseverance that I have. Credit that a lot of that to that mentality. I think that I just kind of fed into it more and more and more, and then it got stronger and stronger.
Steve, man, growing up in Calgary, for me, I was heavy in track, heavy in football, heavy in basketball, heavy in a whole bunch of other things. And I did not know where to get into boxing because I wanted to articulate that, put that into my training and my regime, but I didn't know what the heck, where that even looked like, where to start. How did you get your start in boxing, man? Was it because Steve, people are going to be seeing this and they watching you. Boxing isn't something that someone picks up and says, yo, I want to get punched in the face for a living, right?
Right.
Usually, maybe there's something that pulls, it's a calling, it's a feeling. But how did you get started in boxing?
Well, I have a good one actually, because when I was always a fighter. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I played hockey. I played a whole bunch of different other sports, but one time it was in a hockey game. I got into a fight with another kid, and I stepped on my stick and I fell down, and he got the best of me. He hit me a bunch of times as I was going down. We get kicked out of the game, and I was holding it in. I was internally furious,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes,
I
sir.
and I had been in fights, scraps and scrums at school, and I had been like, I was kind of an aggressive kid by nature, just cause I don't, it was in me. But anyways, that night I was furious. I was mad because I lost. I didn't get him, and it was weighing on me. And then my mom actually saw my anger, and the next day happened she happened to go to a gym where there was a instructor, a boxing trainer, who was teaching boxing one-on-ones with young kids or whoever wanted to learn. And she came up to me and she's like, I put you into a boxing lesson. You're going to learn today. And her idea was that it would be a vent for my aggression, and
Mm.
it turned out to be exactly that. And I'm thankful for that. I'll tell you what.
Was it something when you did it that you said, man, I want to do this? Because sometimes I hear people talk, Steve, and they're like, man, the moment that I touched a basketball, like I knew this was the thing. Was it like that for you, or was it something that you kind of grew into enjoying and liking?
I definitely grew into it because at first I was all about the how to do it right. I was trying to learn the skills. I was trying to develop. I was trying to work on my different moves and different things I was doing. And then it led to, okay, I got to be in good shape to do this. You have to be in top condition to fight, to spar, to do all the stuff. So then it became application, and then it became about the nutrition, then it became about the mindset. So all these pieces just pulled me deeper and deeper into the game. So I think gradually I fell in love with the sport, but I always had that the internal fire for some reason when I just love to fight, and that was
Yeah.
part of me. And it was a gradual consistency that started making me go deeper and deeper into the game.
You've almost fought about 40 fights now, man, but along the way, there's certain habits that you have to build and have to cultivate. What was the habits? What Put it this way, what was one of the habits that you cultivated that helped you get to where you are today? And what was one of those ones that you kind of had to break, right? Because you got to break something in order to build it up. But was there a stubborn battle in your mind that you were kind of holding on to, and then when you let go of it, things transitioned over?
Yes. Oh, okay. So one that I always had was my perseverance. Like you dig down, even in training, in the fights. It's like when it's really tough, you push even more. You push harder. And this was like in boxing, it's called your heart. It's like if
Mm.
you got it, like that was something I always had. And I don't know if it was like an anger thing or if it was just my fight that I wanted to prove something. I wanted to bring something out of myself. But whenever I was really backed into a corner, push, I would push back. And I didn't like that, but it was kind of part of who I am as a fighter. And it took this lashing out, this retaliation to being cornered that helped me find my fighter. Like that's how I found it. And then later in life, on the other end of it, you can't fight everybody. You have
Mm.
to learn. You have to learn how to
That's good.
embrace. You gotta be able to listen to your coach. Sometimes people know more than you. You have to be able to embrace the new knowledge coming in and not be a fighter to that, because you still got to let it in. You still got to learn. You still have to grow. But you keep the two. You know what I mean? Like it's a tough balance. But I learned early, okay, you got to be able to dig to win the fights, to train, to stay consistent, to be disciplined. And then later in life, I'm like, okay, you got to be malleable because you have to be able to learn and take in info, or
Mm.
else the other guys are going to pull ahead. You're never going to, they say if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So you need to go together. You got to go far in this game. And I learned, I guess, humbling over time that you don't know everything. You got to learn. You need the fight, but you also need to be open to new.
What was that fight or that moment where you said, you know what, man, I'm on the right track here. Like, I think this could be something big because, for me, Steve, just, in all transparency, as I always am, there was a race where after I turned professional, right? And I didn't win the race. I got like maybe fifth, but I ran a time on because I was injured and I was coming off back off the injury, but I ran a time coming off the injury that I was just like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, once this starts to click here, once I get healthy, man, it's gonna be over for you guys, right?
Right,
But I didn't win. I think I got like fifth, but I was very close. But it made
right.
me say, you know what? I can compete with these elite guys. Was there a moment like that for you, Steve, that you said, you know what? I can compete with the best in this division?
You know what? I never thought about that, but I guess, well, I like to call it recognizing your brilliance. I had a mentor say that to me once. You're recognizing your own brilliance in whichever field, like in this or in that. And I think when I was younger, I had a couple sparring sessions when I boxed with a guy. I boxed with a guy named Zab Judah, and Zab Judah
Yes.
was, he's a 5-time world
Yeah.
champion. He was a guy that I watched coming up, and I was like, I remember I went to the gym and they asked me if I want to spar with them, and I was nervous, man. I go into the washroom and I was like, I was like changing my stuff, but I was so, I was so stressed. I was so worried because I had created this, this idea of him. Now he is a great fighter, but when we got in there and we boxed and we moved, we were working together. We were working on stuff, and it gave me this confidence. Like, oh, we're just moving around. We're just sparring, but like quick and sharp, and I can keep up. And
Yeah.
I was like, I can stay in there with this guy that I used to watch when I was a kid. And then afterwards, I actually ended up becoming a sparring partner for a couple camps with Zab.
Wow.
So, I mean, obviously he liked the work too. And he had some great performances when we were in those camps together. So that was one moment where I boxed with someone that I thought was he is, he's a 5-time world champ. He's the top of the game, and I held my own, and I was able to keep up, and it allowed me to realize, okay, I do have something. I can keep up with even the best guys that I watched for years and years and years. So this was a hands-on, humbling experience in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, Zab Judah was a problem. You know what I'm saying? Like Zab Judah
Yes,
was a
sir.
problem. But
Yes, sir.
Steve, you spoke about something that I think is very important, man. You talked about, I made up this image inside my head of this figure of this guy who I used to watch on TV. And then once you get into the ring, it's like, wait a minute, I'm here.
Yes.
How do you overcome those doubts, those fears, those insecurities to get into the ring? Because every day always obviously isn't going to be a good day, especially when you're in camp, you're tired, you're sore, you don't want to do it, all these different things, right? But you get into the ring and those same insecurities and fear, they might be there, but you can't pay attention to them.
Right.
How do you take all of that into the ring and block that out? Is there something that you say to yourself? Is there a routine that you do? How do you go about that?
Well, I have a good one now with all the experience that I have, and I mean it may sound typical, but you stay mindful. You stay in the present moment, and that's a hard thing, especially when you're an overthinker like myself. You think about everything, but the ability to cut that mental thread and stop thinking, just do what you're doing. Just stay where you're at. I'm walking. I'm sitting. I'm standing. I'm focused on my warm up for the fight. I'm focused on um, what I'm gonna drink before the fight, which like Powerades or Gatorades or coconut waters. I'm thinking about the exact details, and it takes me out of my head. So I think that when you let your thoughts run away from you, you kind of get overwhelmed because what if this happens? What if this happens? What about that? You can't control that. So you bring yourself back. Okay, I'm sitting. I'm here. I'm right here. I'm going to wherever I'm going. I'm eating. I'm watching this video. I'm reading this book. So it's a reminder to be mindful and to bring yourself back to the present moment. And I always watch a lot of superstar athletes, and they talk about Jordan, they talk about Kobe, and they talk about how they're like having fun. They're walking to the game. They're talking about they're joking around with people. They're just in the moment. They're being mindful, but in a way that like athletes do. We're playing around, we're messing around with our friends, we're doing what we're doing as if it was any other day, and you're focused on just living instead of letting your thoughts run away from you thinking about what about this, what about this, what about this, because that never ends if you don't let it. But I think one of the pieces that I have in that sense that's very strong is I know how to cut the thread now.
Mm.
When I start overthinking, I'm like, hey, stop it, cut it, boom. That's enough. Don't worry about that, and then get back to what I'm doing. And this is a mental strength that I developed over years and years. It's still not easy, but it's an important one.
Yeah, man. I used to see Usain Bolt at the line just warming up, and he used to be so like joyful, right?
Right,
Laughing. And I'm like, yo, bro, like I don't have time to be joyful. I'm trying to
right.
dominate, right? But that's who he is. And I learned over time that in pressure situations, man, you kind of just do what got you there, do what you
Right.
did in training. You know, I want to go quickly back to something else that you said, man. The experience learning over time. And if you want to go far, go together. And if you don't want to go far, go alone. Now you have a promotional company behind you, man, but you didn't always have that, So what was those early days coming boxing like, man? I know, did you have to promote yourself, right? Did you have to tell people to come in? What was those early times like coming up? And was it frustrating, man?
Yes. Well, okay. So at the very beginning, I had a promoter for the first 2 years, and
Okay.
then I went independent because my trainer slash manager at that time started doing his own shows, and then we started putting together shows in Calgary.
Yeah.
And then I started getting offers because now my record had built up. I was around 10-0, 12-0. I started getting offers in different places, different locations. But the issue is that with that is when you get an offer, it's usually against the other guy for his promotional company on his show, and that's what they call the A side, B side of boxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of times when the promoter, that fighter, and the whole team, they know about the fight in months in advance. But being the opponent, you might get that call 1 month in advance, 3 weeks, 2 weeks. I had times during those times of my life when I was getting calls 1 week out, or the fight's this weekend. You want to take it? And it's tough because you don't have any leverage in the game of boxing because there's no organization, there's no league, there's no, you're on your own. So when you get the big promoter coming at you, hey, here's this offer, take this, and if you don't take it, we're never going to offer you anything again. And then you're backed into a corner, and you're like, okay, so you learn how to kind of swim in the ocean,
Mm.
but when you get a promoter, now you're not swimming no more. You got a big boat that you're on, and you got a team. You got some weight in the game, and it's a career changer for me. And I mean, I had a lot of years when I was fighting as the B side, taking last minute fights, fighting top prospects when they thought that I was an easy walkover to add to the record, and I built a lot of fortitude going through that and a lot of strength because it was hard. It was really hard. And so I've seen both sides of the game, and I have like an understanding now, and that I'm thankful for that because now I'm in a good spot. I recognize it. I know how good of a spot I'm in, and it's like I feel like they gave me the ball now. I'm going to show them how fast I can run.
Yeah, man. I've been watching boxing a long, long time, man. And people, casual people, and people who, watch always want to say, man, why isn't this person not fighting this person? And, whenever people ask me that, I'm like, yo, it's a business first. Business got to make sense.
Right. Right.
Steve, how do you not get sucked into things that you cannot control, right? Because it's easy for people to say, or for you to say, control the controllables. But at the end of the day, we're humans. And sometimes in those moments, the frustration gets the best of us, man. So, how have you been able to stay grounded amid the politics and the ups
Right.
and downs of the business of sport, as you can compete with the best, you can get these big fights, but it's just not happening yet. How did you control all of that?
Well, I learned how to work inwards and build myself because I had ups and downs, and I had times when I learned the hard way, and I took a couple of fights, a week before or 2 weeks before against a top guy, and I lose a decision, and I feel like if it went two more rounds, I win that fight, and I had him, and so you learn the hard way, but I guess you always work inward. You just take this new info, and now going forth, I'm gonna do it like this. So this happened to me, and now when I go forward, next time that comes around, I'm not gonna make that kind of deal, or I'm not gonna agree to those kinds of terms. So you live and learn, but like boxing is a tough game because they don't want you to learn. They want you to stay ignorant so that you come in and add to the other guy's record. So in that sense, I learned I wasn't on my own because I always have a close circle of people around me, which is very, very important. You need your close team, you need your family, you need all of the above. But I had my circle to confide with, and I would make smart decisions according to what we thought was the best, and that was something that gave me strength even in times when I was not on the ASA. I was against the house, and I was being trapped with negotiations, and I didn't have any leverage, and there was all sorts of stuff going on. But you learn patience. You learn if you get better, you'll be better, and you learn to keep a good team around you.
Yeah, man, you've went into a lot of people's places and got the win against them or lost a close fight.
Right.
Steve, when again going back to casual fans, right? When a casual person looks at your record, they see the 35 wins, but they see the 7 losses and they get
Yes.
more fixated on the 7 losses and they forget, the guy has 35 wins, and I think you
Right.
stopped 25 of your opponents by knockout. How do you mentally get back to a positive state after a loss, right? How do you not let the losses define you? Because I think people often forget at the end of the day, it's a fight.
Yes.
Anything can happen. Records
Yeah.
don't matter once you get into the ring. But
Yes.
how do you not let those losses define you?
Well, because it is what it is, and nobody wants to lose. But when you already got the loss, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. My dad used to say to me, he's like, "What are you gonna do? Take your ball and go home?" And it's like, well, but yeah, and that's true. Are
That's
you gonna
good.
quit? Are you gonna quit, or do you continue forwards? And then in boxing, there was this whole stigma of undefeated is the only way to go. You got to be Floyd Mayweather. You got to be have that O on your record. Don't get me wrong. I love Floyd. I spent a lot of time in Vegas and I was training there, and I learned a lot at that gym and just being around. And I'm a super fan. But the game is about perseverance, and things don't always go perfect. And
Yeah.
even when you take losses, they say you're only as good as your last fight. So if you keep going forwards, you'll be somewhere else tomorrow. But if you sit here, I had a time when I lost a fight, and I went into depression. I stayed, I went out, I was partying, I was getting in trouble, I was doing, and I was younger, and I learned through that doesn't get me anywhere. That doesn't do anything. It just creates a deeper hole for me to pull myself out of. And then later in life, I had another loss, and instead of feeling sorry for myself, working downwards and kind of dwelling in it, I started right away. I'm gonna act as if I not act as if I won, but I'm gonna move forward. I'm gonna get on my weight training. I'm gonna connect with these people. I'm gonna talk to this potential sponsor. I'm gonna work with this potential sparring partner. I'm gonna move forwards. And then I found when I started the momentum, started going forwards, things started happening. And I
Mm.
had two choices. It's like you either sit and dwell where it's bad, or you start walking, and you start moving, and then something could happen. And you know what? Something did, and that's why I think you always got to keep going forwards. And it's like, as bad as the loss is, think about the next one, because you'll only be back on top when you get it. So you might as well look that way.
Yeah, man, I think I tell people who are starting sports in general, or even things in life, man, you got to have short-term memory, man. You got to
Right.
try, right?
Right.
You got to practice it every single day because if you don't have, if you dwell on stuff for too long, man, it just eats at you. Uh, let's talk about your last opponent, man. Your most recent fight, right? You beat a former champion in his own right.
Right.
Uh, I have a YouTube channel, man, and it's called The Breakdown, and this is where I met your brother Nick actually.
Okay. Nice.
And I was breaking down your fight, and people were DMing me saying, "Man, you have Steve winning the fight." I'm like, yeah, because it wasn't so much about the style of the fight. Obviously, style makes fight, but to me, man, a lot of life is about momentum, right?
Yes.
Momentum and
Yes.
confidence. And I think those two things play such a big role. And you've been on this, what, 5, 6 fight win streak. And I'm like, man, he's got a lot of momentum coming in. But I also
Yes.
got the sense personally, man, that, you were fighting with the purpose behind it. I could be completely wrong, but to me, it looked like that as I was watching the lead up to it and watching some of your previous fights. I'm like, this guy is it's now or never. Every
Yes.
fight is now or never. But to me, I
Yeah.
was like, man, this guy looks good. I thought you were gonna stop him between rounds 5 and 6, but you did it a lot earlier.
Yeah.
Leading up to that fight, man, what was camp like? And what was the mindset going into that fight for you?
Well, the camp was tough for me the last fight actually because I was in Montreal. I do my training camps there so that I'm with my
Okay.
coach. My
Yeah.
coach, Mike Moffa, he's a highly touted coach from Montreal. Like he's he's been in the game for a long time. And actually, funny enough, he at one point in time was the enemy coach because he was the head trainer of Yves Ulysses Jr.
Yeah.
and then he was the head trainer of Matthew Germain. So two guys that I've fought. And the second time I fought Matthew, I went into the fight, a little bit. I won't say unprepared because I was in tip-top shape, but I was unprepared in the sense that I didn't have a trainer and I didn't have a a team that was an organized team behind me. So I had my friend, my good buddy, come in, and he was playing head trainer,
Yeah.
and this is good for moral support, but you need to know tactics and you got to have
Yeah.
strategy. And in that fight, I remember Matthew doing things that were strategically right. He would turn me this way. He'd clinch me up after letting his punches go. He'd do all sorts of stuff that was strategically designed to shut down what I was trying to do.
Mm.
And these were like my natural instincts. So after the fight, a little while after, because I had talked to Mike previously, I went to Montreal and I contacted him and I was like, Mike, I need you to show me how you beat me. I need to
Mm.
learn, what did I do wrong? Like, what was the
Wow.
game plan? How do you beat me? How did you beat me? Show me. So I went there and I started training with him, and he literally, like, little things have come out in the gym, like, oh, we were doing this, we did this, but it was the process of one, accepting it, because it wasn't any fun for me, but accepting it and moving forward. It's like I can't sit on this loss. That's not who I am. Instead, I'm gonna grow. So I'm working with this new trainer, and he's gonna show me this new stuff directly, exactly on my flaws, what I'm doing wrong, because these were the guys who beat me. So now I'm like, okay, show me all the pieces because I'm gonna use those. I'm gonna work on those, and I'm gonna recreate those and redesign those because I don't want those flaws in the game anymore. And it was a hard pill to swallow,
Oh.
but it also, I think, is one of the best things that I ever did because one, my coach and I work well together. We're awesome together. We're a winning team. And two, you got to be able to look in the mirror in order to improve. Sometimes you got to look in the mirror and see your weak spots, and that's never easy, but it's always a necessity.
Mike, I got two more questions left for you, Steve. Man, that's a powerful statement you just said, man. Because
Thanks, bro.
not a lot of people would do that. I promise you, they wouldn't. They say, "Yeah, I want to go and learn from my losses. I want to go to the guy that." They're not gonna do that.
Ego,
Um,
ego check. That it had to.
uh, what's been the biggest lesson that you've learned about yourself throughout your career in boxing, man?
Wow, I mean, that's a good one. I learned that I can take more than I thought, which
Mm,
was a hard lesson, but not just mentally, not just being tough, or sorry, not just physically, not just being tough, but mentally, because when things get hard, the perseverance, the fact that I didn't have the choice at times. I couldn't go back. Like, when I was younger, I used to train in Las Vegas and I lived there for months at a time. And I had times when I was so lonely, man. I didn't have any of my friends, family. I didn't see anybody other than in the gym for weeks on end, months. Like, it became hard, but I turned inwards and I realized, okay, you can lean on yourself. This is a big piece. You work inwards, you never run out of that. You never are out of touch with yourself. So it's never a bad thing to work inwards. And I learned that I got a little more strength than I gave myself credit to. And then as far as the physical skills, I learned that if you build it, you'll have it. And all my time that I spent in the gym, it's adding up and it is paying off. And when I was a 14-year-old kid boxing and I did my extra rounds because I thought when I'm older, I'm going to be able to do extra rounds. Guess what? That's true. Because I got
Yeah.
extra rounds in the tank now, and that was something that I did since I was a kid. And it's like, it's what they call compound interest. You get better and better, and it starts giving you more and more as time goes on. So I feel like that I had more than I thought, and if you build it, you'll have it. Those are two big lessons that I learned from the game.
If you build it, you'll have it. That's good, man. Last question before we close this out here, Steve. You're not too far from the top 15 in the rankings, man. Who would you like to test yourself against next? Like, is there a name, or is it just anybody in that top 15 that you would like to be in the ring with next, man?
Well, anybody in the top 15 for sure. But if we're gonna talk specifics, um, Ryan Garcia is coming up to 140. I believe he's there now.
Yeah.
I think that my style will give his style a lot of problems. Um, I don't know if Teofimo is retiring or if he's, what he's
Hey,
gonna
if the
do.
money's right, he'll be back.
Exactly. That's what I was gonna say. A lot of fighters pull that one, so we'll see. But that would be one. Just he's the top dog, so that's the one. That's the fight I want. And short of those two, anybody in the top 10, because I'm knocking at the door. I've been banging on the door for a long time, and it's time to prove my worth on this earth. It's been a long time coming, but I'm ready to keep going and I'm ready to step up to it. So anyone in the top 10, I'm ready for him and I'm gunning for him too.
Hey man, I'm never a guy to sugarcoat stuff. I'll never tell someone something that they need to hear to feed their ego, man. Man, your last 5 fights, man, you've been looking great. And I really think you give any of those cats problems because of your style, but also the mentality, everything that you've shared with me, man. I don't get the two Olympics because I'm talented. I got the two Olympics because my mentality was just different
Right.
because of how I grew up. Right.
Yes, sir.
So uh last question, man. But everybody hears from me on the show, but they're gonna hear from you, man, because I believe that someone out there is going through something, and
Right.
someone's going to be listening to this, and they might have gotten gut punched, right?
Right.
Maybe in this season of their lives. And I'm a firm believer, man. You don't know what you need to hear until you hear it. So if there was a word of encouragement that you could share with someone who might need that strength and that encouragement to get back up and keep fighting, man, what would that be today?
Well, actually, connected to what you just said, seasons. There's not always a good season, there's not always a bad season, but they're forever changing. So when you're in those tough spots, remember that in a month from now, you're going to feel totally different. In a week from now, you're going to feel totally different. Tomorrow, you're going to feel totally different. So that seasons change, days change, and you're not going to sit there. You're not going to stay in one spot. And I think forward momentum is key. Like you just start moving, and if you keep going, things will change. But if you sit there, you're going to stay. And this is something that I learned the hard way in boxing because I had, like I said before, I had times when I sat with that loss and I let it just grow on me, and life got worse. But then when I took a different loss and started working towards something, just even little bits, just work on my health, work on my positivity, work on my friendships, like things that really count too. But I started moving forwards and I got out of there faster than any other time before. So I think just remember that there's seasons. Things aren't always tough, and tomorrow's a new day.
Steve, thank you so much, man. Appreciate your time. I'm rooting for you, man. We got a lot of support coming your way, man. A lot of momentum going your way. And I'm wishing you all the best, man. I'm gonna keep supporting you. I'm gonna keep watching. As you talked about the seasons, man, your season is now. You know what I'm saying? Your season is now, and I'm looking forward to seeing you claim it. What's the best way for people to keep in touch with you, man? What's the social media platform you're on the most so people can support and reach out?
You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. I'm a S Dragon, so just the letter S Dragon, and you'll find me. And I mean, stay up to date because this next couple these next couple years I think are going to be the loudest of the career. So follow me, S Dragon, on anything. You'll find me. And thanks, bro.
Love to hear it, man. Hey, man, let's stay in touch, man. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again for your time, brother.
Appreciate you, bro. You
All right,
too.
man. Take care.